Ja, oké, live. Oké. Ik krijg al veel Steve, maar hij is aan. Ik heb weer foto's, Steve. Oké. Ja, hij staat live. Okay, live. Yes. We quickly solve questions. Okay, live.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Wow, what a crowd. My name's Heather Robertson. I'm the editor of a little newspaper in a little town, one of the littlest cities in the country, Port Elizabeth. And Professor Piet Naudé was one of our most popular columnists. So I have to say to you here in the Western Cape and Belleville and University of Stellenbosch that you are exceptionally lucky to have stolen Professor Piet Naudé from us. And we are exceptionally sad about it. But yes, our loss is definitely your gain. I first met Professor Piet Naudé when I had to attend my first official function as editor of the Herald in Port Elizabeth. This was late in 2010. Piet was the master of ceremonies at the newspaper's annual Herald Citizen of the Year Awards. This is an award set up to promote local unsung heroes and heroines who go beyond the call of duty to excel in serving the greater good. This award absolutely resonates with Piet's firm grounding in ethical leadership. Piet has carved a name for himself. Remember that he's actually not a businessman. Don't let him trick you into thinking that. So I don't think he knows much about making profits, the pressures that we all have to go under. Piet is actually, I hope he's actually told you, Piet is actually a domineer, a theologian by training. All his degrees have been in theology. But he has carved a name for himself, not only in Port Elizabeth, but nationally and internationally, as an outspoken proponent of living an ethical public and private life, a way of living and thinking that we in South Africa, and indeed the world, desperately need. And we know why we need that. We're living in an era of corruption, entitlement, selfish individualism, and, unfortunately, the pursuit of profit at all costs, without much consideration of its impact on our planet or its people. What really distinguishes Piet from his academic peers, who often lose touch with us mere mortals who reside in the cut and thrust of life beneath the hallowed ivory towers of the academy, is his amazing ability to communicate and connect with ordinary folk like us, and like the varied readers of the Herald in Port Elizabeth, in a warm, engaging, occasionally mischievous and naughty, and funny, but always thought-provoking way. It's for this reason that Piet's gathered quite a following with the Herald's audience, and I still am angry with him for leaving us, because people would buy our paper on Tuesday just to read Piet. His weekly meditations of life, ethical conundrums from corruption in government and business, also segued into controversial forays into more personal ethics, like work addiction. I think a lot of people in the professions and in business can relate to that. Also the hideous face of our consumer culture. He hates shopping malls. Shopping malls are horrible places. The perils of parenthood. He's given us 7 rules for sanity in parenthood. And I promise you, everywhere I used to edit his column every Monday, I would have a great chuckle and reflect on my own life and how I conduct myself after reading it. And I do hope that with this book, other people will also reflect on their lives and their role in our society, in our country, and in the world. So I'm going to hand over to Professor Piet Naudé and to speak about his book, and hope that you all go out and get a copy. It's actually, I'm very proud of this book. It's the first book that our little newspaper in Port Elizabeth has actually published, and I'm very proud to be associated with Professor Piet Naudé. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Heather, and for flying down to us specifically this morning. It's for me a great honor. Colleagues and friends, if it were not for Heather, this little booklet would not have happened. She was the one who pushed me from a Monday column of 350 words to a Tuesday column of 800 words. And even when I am an academic, I say to her, "Dis heeltemal te veel woorde, I won't be able to write that much every week." Despite being a man of letters, according to the books. And then she later said, "Let's put this up in a little volume." Went through Times Media. I can declare up front, I'm not making a cent out of this book. I see it as my duty to serve public discourse. And I want us to give Heather a hand, because this book is because of her. Heather, thank you very much. I dedicated this book to, I'm just reading it at the beginning, for Elizabeth Nwabisa-Rood, the African woman in my life. That is my dear wife. Her students gave her the African name Nwabisa because of her deep concern for people. It means the one who makes you happy. And I'm happy to dedicate this book to her. The book has, well, it was written over 9.5 years, and I must say, Heather, I'm very proud to say I've never missed a single day. So I've written more than 400 of these. There are 61 in this booklet, and there are in 10 little divisions or chapters, which are all comments on big issues in our society. And in a morning like this, in 30 or 40 minutes, I can really snippet some of that, and hope that will entice you to actually buy the book. You could buy it online from Mega Books for 102 Rand. If you go outside, you can get it for 100 Rand. You see, I am a business. But because I don't want cash on my premises here, we will work on this. Is interesting. It's completely based on honesty. You can take a book, we will take your details, and then we wait for your payment. No, I'm serious. I thought that in Europe you can take newspapers in the streets and throw in your euro or whatever and walk away. But we should try that in South Africa. I am a little bit jittery because I went to Switzerland on some other journey and found that the public transport system works on the basis of honesty. So you would buy your ticket at the airport. You are not checked every time that you enter or exit. It's simply honesty. You click it. So I asked one of the Swiss persons, why would this work in Switzerland? It's all in the book. And he said, well, firstly, there's two things. Firstly, we believe if all of us pay, we collectively contribute to an asset that is to the use of all. So you want free ride because then you don't make your contribution. And secondly, he says, it's not about the money, but if you are caught without a ticket, which is, I think, 50 francs is the boete. It's the shame to be seen without a ticket. I then brought that back to a class of MBA students and said, shall we do an experiment in South Africa of free public transport paid for on the basis of honesty? And they all started to laugh, because this is the state of this nation. We have been corrupted to the core, and I'll show you later that we, as we sit here, should not so easily think we are outside of that. So, what is this book all about? Let me show you a few things. I think that the title is actually very nice. You read, not the headlines, you read between the lines. And all of us read words and sentences, we read non-verbal communication, but this book is about reading social language, which is a little bit more difficult, but also much, much more interested. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to read what you won't normally see. I try to open the eyes of myself and others to things that you won't see. It's in academic language, a hermeneutic of suspicion. Things are not as they look. There might be something else behind that. And obviously, I always do that with self-critique, because there's nothing as condescending and as academic we try to tell society how bad they are and think that he or herself are exempt from those critiques. You speak to yourself first because you are part of this nation. So in terms of a scheme in which I work is I try to move from the seen to the unseen and make people see what is below the water. So there is now the one that got me the Vodacom Prize for the best journalist in 2011. It's a very strange title. I'll never strive for that as an academic, but here it is. It's about our obsession with meetings. Another matter is the agenda. Most issues on the agenda are decorative. Everyone with even a sense knows that the outcome of decisions are already set in advance. It is very rare that the point is on the agenda because it requires actual deliberation. It is there because it stood over from last time, or because it looks like a threat to everyone. But this is exactly where the illness strikes. Because an item is there to be discussed, it is then discussed. The chair looks expectantly around the table. There is a space of silence. But then someone, that talkative one, feels obliged to save the chair by embarrassing and start saying something that everybody already knows. To make sure that the therapy kicks in, a few others will also join the discussion and say about the same things as the first speaker, but in slightly different ways. The blind followers, who are there because they must attend, according to the delegation of power document, normally speak last by saying, yes, we agree with all the previous speakers. This is fantastic group therapy. The ritual repeats itself through all the agenda items. Then the deep therapy starts. It comes under general. Further points. A really meeting disorder chair, which is now a recognized psychiatric condition, allows to make this long. It makes sure the meeting takes all afternoon, and not only up to tea times at 3 o'clock. Where this disorder has gripped the DNA of organizational culture, people feel happy and comforted, but they probably function at only 50% of their potential. Then would I ever not know that? Would they? Because they are in a meeting, discussing the setting up of another task team to advising on future meetings. Sorry guys, I must go now. I have a meeting. I want 15,000 rand for that. Because they decided in the meeting that I was the best. It's about looking at the world with different glasses. And again, our lovely South Africa with all its contradictions. Those of you who do not know, that artwork has been defaced. The artists have been put on security and all, but let's not go there. It's for me quite touching. It is looking towards Robben Island from you all know this probably in Sea Point, and it's a let us adopt the spectacles of freedom for our country. And this is the kind of lenses to which I would like to work. So I read 10 social codes. I didn't plan it, obviously. I just grouped it afterwards. For this morning, for the 20 minutes or so we have, I'm going to talk about 5 of them. And I will make some readings in between, but the book is much richer. I think there's some interesting little stories that you might find interesting. What is nice about the book, if I now want to sell it as a marketing person, is that you never have to spend more than, say, 5 or 6 minutes reading it, because it's all short passages. The toilet is a wonderful place to go. What do we see on the surface? South Africans are mad about sport, and it's a very good thing. Why? It teaches individual determination. You must frustrate, especially in sports where you're the only participant, singular, like swimming or athletics. It teaches you determination. It's good. It's a team sport, it teaches you working in a team. You even get business consultants who say soccer can teach businesses teamwork. People make money out of everything they can. The whole sport industry that has been created, Andre Roux, our futurist economist, tells us the other day that the sport industry in South Africa just exceeded mining in GDP and income. Amazing what sport has done to this nation. And it brings us together. Cohesion in our divided society, when we wave our flags and we're happy at Bafana and the Western Province, unless you're a blue bull, you're very happy. But it's not. That is not the truth. Behind our obsession with sport is an obsession with physicality, with bodiness, and the ideal of the Olympic body that is forever young and forever beautiful. I always marvel at the Cosmopolitan and the Men's Health. You will always see Photoshop perfect people, which is then held up as the ideal for anybody else. Jy weet in jou hart, ek kan in my hele lewe nooit so lyk nie. I will even follow a painting diet. Look at my shirt. You want to look like that. That becomes easy. Those of you on the professions of psychology, social work, or dietitians will see the wreckage of persons based on that. I see Botox was just sold for $6 billion because people want to look like that physical ideal. This is what makes Oscar so interesting. Because so-called disabled athletes are not known. But anybody in this audience knows more than 2 disabled athletes that have won many medals for South Africa at disabled games. I only rolls too many feet. Van Dijk and Oscar. The rest you would not know why, because they're not in the mainstream. They don't live up to the ideal of the body and the Olympic that we have in our minds. What makes Oscar an enigmatic figure, leave what happens later, is that for half of his body he looks like us, and he had to take us to court to compete with us, because he brings into this sacred space of the Olympic body a foreign tick that doesn't look right. And then he's challenged because he might be advantaged by his legs and all sorts of things. This is what it is about when it comes to sport. And if you go further, beneath below the surface, it moves the concept of courage in society into physicality. I thought that to raise a child with a disability is true courage. I thought to stay in a difficult marriage for the sake of the relationship and the children, that's true courage. I thought to work in a state hospital as a medical doctor under terrible conditions, when you know you can join healthcare for a lot of money and fantastic circumstances. You stay there. I thought that is courage. But now we've moved courage to, jy weet, ek het my eerste halfmarathon klaar. And then after you've done it, gaan die 2 oceans af. And then you get people getting more crazy and crazy because we come out. Ek gaan dwars om Madagaskar roei op 'n moeise klein bootjie. What they do though to relativize this obsessity with physicality is they link it to good causes. Every year around Madagascar, I will get R1 for the Mandela Children's Fund. Well, then you link consumerism with physicality, which is actually what sport is. And if you go further, it's deeply sexist. Have you ever watched tennis at Wimbledon? What is the prize money for women and the prize money for men? And who plays on Saturday and who plays on Sunday? Yeah. It's quite simple. The pinnacle of Wimbledon is not that fleeting moment of the women's final, unless it's really a beautiful Russian girl. Sunday, because they're the real strong people, not the weaker sex, the strong ones who need. And the advertising income of that is very, very high. The cost per minute to buy advertising is Spa. That's terrible advertisement here in Wimbledon. Spa. If you look at golf, women's golf can be as good as men in their own field. But because sport emphasizes the physical strength difference between men and women, it's easy to sexism. It reinforces our right of weaker sex. Meaning physically, but then somewhere we generalize to other things as well. It's deeply classist. I went into a cycle shop the other day and thought, I also want to become more active. I want to join this great South African revival in sport. And I wanted to buy myself a mountain bike. Walk into a shop in Port Elizabeth. My idea was to spend about 2,000 to 3,000 rand. It doesn't have an engine. It doesn't have an engine. The first bicycle I saw as I came into the shop to the left, 102,000 rand. I almost fainted. I said, this guy, you're crazy. Do you get the shop if you buy this bike? And then suddenly I realized why sport is so popular. It is because it's popular with the middle classes and the elite. It's a way to state your social status in society on your 100,000 by 5 o'clock in the morning, with a little light flashing at the back while your children want you to see them off to school. You are busy with your shellfish lifestyle, practicing for the next Ironman or for the office. Terrible, terrible condition to find yourself in. And then the worst of all, a fireman who works for Cape Town Metro, who put his or her life on line to save people in distress. We pay them 25,000 rand a month. Because that is how we value what they do. Money means you put your money to that which you value. Okay? Now, you find a young 19-year-old fly off somewhere from Grey College in Bloemfontein, and because he competes well, you say, I'll make you an offer of 2 million rand for 4 months of work. Now, my question is, what social value does the young fly off from Grey contribute to society, which probably lasts for 4 or 5 years until he's injured and no longer part of the plan? Where a fireman works a lifetime to save others. Sport emphasizes the distorted values of our society by overcompensating. I mean, if you are selected to play in the netball golf, if you come last, I thought at school, if you last, you get nothing. No. There, even just to walk onto the pitch, you will get $2 million. And then you can still ask for all sorts of appearance fees and so forth. I think I must try that. I want to. And colleagues, let us be honest. Sport does provide cohesion, but it's like an injection that works out. You don't build social cohesion via sport. You build it via shared values. And the terrible price we pay for the grandeur of politicians who want South Africa to become known as the sport destination of the world. I'm sure we're going to vie for the Olympic Games. What morally stupid idea. Because the cost afterwards are carried by ordinary people. And no longer by the politicians who bask in the sunlight of 1 month of television crews flying into South Africa. 25 billion tax-free dollars taken out by FIFA. And we say it was a huge success. I cannot believe it. It is madness. It is utterly madness. And then my child, who's a dietitian, tells me that the figures on obesity is shooting up. Despite all the hype around sport, we are not actually increasing health. The reason is simple. It's for a small elite. The rest of us are getting fatter and lazier as we watch the TV. And the Saturday walks that they have, we do that, there's something for 3 days, do it daarna. Because you didn't practice for it, but you go because the cry hype you. It's all like, you know, sheep, that we are sheep in our minds. As 10,000 mense wat geloop het, ek gaan ook saamloop. Want dit vir 3 dae lang, and I don't have a lifestyle. Okay. So sport in South Africa is a big lie, it should be contained by the law. Now my biggest fight was with the Ironman people. Oh my word. I was almost taken to court because I wrote the following about them. Port Elizabeth is very proud about the Ironman. That city doesn't have many big events, so if you have one, you have to keep it. So, there is no way any normal person in the world would wake up one morning and say, hey, I want to swim 3.8 kilometers in the sea. Not 3.7 or 3.9. After I come out of the water, I think I will then go and cycle for 180 kilometers for some sightseeing. And then to round it off, I immediately set off jogging a vibrant 42.2 kilometers. You only do such a stupid thing if you have a serious need for public recognition, coupled with the influence of mass hysteria. And you see those pathetic figures desperately trying to finish, even creeping for attention from the government. And this is what got me into trouble. What is required is not a medical thing at the end, but a psychiatric one. I'm now going to talk mentally fit in the is, as you know, a fairly vague concept. Am I the only sane person left in Nelson Mandela? I was on the radio program, I was seen as a traitor of the city, and they told me all the economic benefits. I said, guys, I'm not interested in that. I read below the lines. And you read the bottom line, that's a different thing. Okay, that was, I mean, this is what the book is about. These interesting things. I can go on for long, but I will net zeggen, maar hoe lang het precies voor? Oh no, that's fantastic. It's longer than a sermon. So when you see these pictures, don't get excited. Get extremely sad. And now obviously one must be very careful to get interesting stories. I flew on a plane after I wrote the story on the island. And I sat next to a gentleman whom I've never met in my life. But he knew me, I think, from the columns, because they had put a little photograph of me there. And so he said to me, are you writing the columns? I said, yeah, no, whatever his name was. He said, I just want to tell you, now this is the sad story that you won't find at the front page. He said, my wife and I agreed that she will train for the Ironman. We've got 2 daughters, 7 and 9. But it's a grueling schedule. You have to cycle in the morning, swim over your lunch hour, and run in the evening. It's terrible. It takes over your whole life. And you can't do it unless you have others, obviously, who step in. She fell in love with one of her training partners, and she divorced me a month ago. I just want to tell you, if you talk Ironman, I want to choke in tears because of her. Then you get the other story. One of my colleagues at the university phoned me after the Ironman article and said, Piet, I'm deeply offended. because my husband was a man without any direction in life. I wasn't sure. He went into depression, midlife depression. He tried to buy a Harley Davidson, that didn't pick him up. And then he decided to be Iron Man. I supported him. I got a new husband back. He's changed. So I want to show you, this is about ambiguity. It's not about black and white, it's about the ambiguities in life. And my job, as I can call myself, if I may, a public intellectual, is to show the ambiguities, to break the monistic view of how we look at society. So let us look at shopping malls. Oh my word. They are signs of progress. They should be welcome because they present, apart from fleeting investments in our country, it's actually brick and mortar investment. It's an economic injection to the suburbs, mostly the white suburbs. It's convenient to have a one-stop shopping mall. I don't have to drive to many different places. Alles is soms so lekker by mekaar. En terwyl the ones now get so big, you need one of these battery cards. Okay. It stimulates consumer spending. It's key. It's a great place for families to live. That's the exception. Now that's obviously a lie. Look at these red people. Just look at this. Absolutely. If you show this to any person who does not live on our planet, will say, "That kan jy lekker plek wees nie." Why? Because it's visual impression. Have you ever seen an architect of note designing a shopping center? They are always as flat as possible and as far as possible because you have to fit in every square meter under the roof. Let me go back. Does that building look beautiful to you? Does those towers look attractive to you? If you do, you have a problem in your head. So firstly, they are just polluting our skyline. They are ecological wastelands. Why? Because around them are kilometers and kilometers of black target, huge buildings. A small shop can put a fan in the roof. These guys run electricity to keep you cool on the inside. Thousands and thousands of megawatts a year is eaten up by these monsters that have to be cooled down because they want you to shop at 22 degrees Celsius. And you can ask any small business person, if a big shopping center moved in, they close the small ones down. They create a wasteland around themselves. And what happens is, if they find a good small, like we had in Port Elizabeth, Royal Taylor was a wonderful private bakery. A mother and a son started a lovely bakery shop about 4 kilometers away from Walmer Park Shopping Center. They did really, really well. And then the power of economics became. If they do so well, they clearly must fulfill a need in the market. So why don't we make them like McDonald's? We make them into many chains. And what they do, they go to the private guys. We just run a small kitchen there and say, we'll buy the place for an astronomical figure as long as you give us the intellectual property. And the next moment, the small person is also corporatized. In that way, you destroy again the initial initiative. That is the problem with big companies. The other issue is, they look like free enterprise, but they're not. You see the court cases now with the exclusivity agreements. If Pick and Pay is in a shopping center they don't want, Checkers there, because they signed an exclusive agreement. So what are shopping centers? You can go anywhere in South Africa, the same shops are in all of them. What are they? They're a chain of monopolies that destroy opposition, and I thought we stand for the free market. And then you say, oh, it's a place for families to go. Now, have you ever thought of the employers you work with? And shopping centers love to tell us, we are now not only open at, what is the black new car shop? Century City or whatever that place is. We are not open from 8 to 5 like a normal Christian person would do. We open from 8 to 10 at night. And I can guarantee you, as Christmas grow nearer, don't be surprised when we get the first shopping center that's like 24 hours, the first time in South Africa. We're going to shop right through the night. For special starting at 3 o'clock in the morning. The problem is, while we go there with our families, the families of all the employees sit somewhere else. In Switzerland, there was recently a vote. And you know, in Switzerland, democracy really works. They don't bring the police into parliament. They have to vote on a very interesting thing. Remember, Switzerland is a secular nation, depending on your definition of secularity. They have to vote whether shops will open on Sundays. And the vote was 49% against, 49 point something, and 50.12 something for it. But the for was only for shops at airports and at big train stations. So they asked the Swiss people, is it because you go to church? And I said, no. But Sundays is my chance to restore my own self, to restore my communication, and I'm paraphrasing now, to be with my family, that we go somewhere to a park, go walk in the mountains, do something interesting. And in a way, they have a sensibility that if you extend consumerism, you destroy community. And this is what our shopping center is doing to us. You can ask how many families go to other places than shopping centers. Many people. Very few. Because it has taken over our lives. In fact, it has religious significance. They are called the cathedrals of our time. Die torings is net 'n bietjie deur. We create a nation of young people who live by the adage, I shop therefore I act. And I'm not talking cheap psychology here. It's a deep sense of identity. That unless I consume, I'm not really a person. Which is a difference. So let me read you something of these infamous places on page 58, if I am correct. This is something. Malls are the most horrible places when it comes to music. They only know two kinds of music. One is the rubbish contemporary stuff chosen by industrial psychologists who think Mozart is a sort of a German disorder. What I refer to here is that at New York Central Station, they hear classical music. Crime went down. Crime went down because in the presence of Mozart, you don't see it. I would love to put Mozart and you can't like The music has to work on our subconscious mind. It is chosen to induce us to consume. And starting by November 1, there are the cheap renditions of Christmas songs with jingle bells, a firm favorite every 10 minutes. One should also not underestimate the physical abuse that takes place in malls. Note that those large open spaces have no chairs and only very few sparsely distributed benches. You have to buy shoes, in fact, to get a chance to get it. I sometimes go into the shoe shop and maak op of skoene moet gaan The reason is that these mall guys know we cannot buy if we sit down. Consumers must also always be on their feet. I saw many a husband or older man out on his feet like a losing boxer, not sure where he was. But it seemed to me, and there's a bit of sexism, women are wired to be energized. All right, so, but just to show my self-depreciation, one should be careful. I think I ended this one. I've done a few of them this is a bit of religious study in here as well about the bread and the wine. And then I said, in the mall, I eat the mass market bread. I see the in-your-face advertising, drawing on our most shallow emotions. I vow not to return, except for the whole grilled chickens. Yeah, that was the shopping malls. Then the idea of the rainbow nation, I'm looking at my watch, I won't go over. We have a rainbow nation, we are an example of unity and diversity, we all come together around the castle. It's interesting that beer adverts are the ideal, typical South African scene. All young, all beautiful, black and white, kissing and hugging. I've never seen it in reality, but it's good. We now have a 16-day campaign to fight violence against women and children because the rest of the year we don't really care. We respect our constitution as all-inclusive, non-racial, where no one is discriminated against based on any form, but we still kill them up kwere in our townships. We love our flag and our anthem, although we only know the Afrikaans part of it. And our schools and workplaces are examples of unity amongst race and gender diversity. And then last week in Johannesburg, in a beautiful place, I saw this artwork. And I asked myself, what is below the water? And I said to my staff, small group of them yesterday, the isms of our society, racism, sexism, classism, are very deeply entrenched in who we are. Not only because of our history, I will show you now how I think it works, but it's difficult to escape, to jump over your own shadow of presuppositions about people. I don't think we have made that much progress. It works like this. When you grow up in whatever community, you acquire the lenses through which you look at other people. Indians are good at business, but check that on the cookie. Nigerians, they come here as drug dealers. Black people, not good at mathematics, but they get prizes for peace. White people, they're honest. The English is not honest. Die boere is bietjie meer eerlik. As hulle sê hulle hou nie van jou nie, nou is dit so. Work with these generalizations. What then happens is, all people from that group are then linked together or lumped together to fit this generalization. So if I meet a Nigerian who's an honest businessman, I say to you, "Waar neem je stil?" And what you do with those spectacles, you constantly look for confirmation that the generalization is in fact correct. So if a white dentist in Cape Town take out the sweep and slaan 'n vrou in die straat, report cases on. Now he's a dentist. He's not an untrained spoorwegwerker wat nog glo Hendrik Verwoerd is die man. He's a woman with a shamble. And it's a wrong woman that because he saw a person broke into his car. And when you see that and you say white people are racist and violent, yeah, you can also say. The same with Oscar and so forth. But then the problem is, what do you do when you see exceptions to your generalization? You say, well, this is an exception, but it's a very small minority. This professor of mathematics who happened to be black, he's a freak, man. Very good at social sciences. And what you then do, you reinforce your lenses, and you go back to where you are. So it's tough to change, because your glasses have to be shattered by experiences, by convictions, by conversions, by contra-evidence that is strong enough that it could change the mind. We must not think that that is easy. 20 years is a bit short to change that. It's interesting, they did an experiment the other day on here at our classes. Sakkie van Wyk is a street sweeper. The fact that we know his name is in fact a wonder, because poor people probably mostly don't have names. Isn't it true? We don't name poor people because they are not fully human in our eyes. You only give a name to a human. So we don't know names. Many people don't know the names and surnames of the domestic workers because they come us from somewhere else with the taxi and then they come and work here. They don't know the name. If the police come and look for them, where does she stay? I have done work for Friday because they don't have a home. Because they are not persons. So this Sakkie guy, they put him on camera. He went into Cape Town a week or two ago and he begged in the streets and they took a video recording of it. Now, people begging is an irritation for us in the middle class. And they counted, now I forgot the figures, but within 4 hours he was rejected more than 100 times. It's not in the rejection that the issue lies. You cannot give money to everybody in the streets, you simply don't have the time for it. Neither might you have the cash in your pocket. It's about your relationship with that person in that moment. You can still interact in a humane manner, even if you don't do it. And that's the point. I want to read you something that I wrote here. Let me just see about how we view people, specifically women and poor people. I just want to get my page here, page 139. There we are. How do we think about women? Women are emotional. They should be loved and not understood. They bring sympathy and soft skills to the workplace, but would not really make good chief executives, as this requires male traits of aggression and a fighting spirit. Because of the impossible balance between work and home, it is better for them and their children to be employed on contract or flexi-time. Because they are more cautious, they qualify for discounts on short-term insurance policies. When women do not fit this picture, we call them iron ladies, like Margaret Thatcher. She's the best man for the job. Deep down, we think how they actually renege on their family responsibilities while they strive to be like men. Were they not in the first place created to serve their husband, their children, and so secure the future of our species? That is the question. So deep down, that is the way the default spectacles work, and it's very tough to get out of that one. So let me try and finish. This is the one that is interesting. Corruption is primarily a government problem. We don't have leaders that are ethical. There's lack of financial controls. There's no sense of conflict of interest. There's a resistance against the Chapter 9 institutions with Madam Sela at the front. And Zuma recently said, in any case, corruption is a Western thing. Very interesting. That was on the front page of The Economist when he was elected. And it's interesting what the subtext say. Can we trust this man? Which was interesting at that point. We now know we cannot. But we must be careful, colleagues. We mustn't judge the public sector harshly and then walk away and say, you are also spent 5 years like on scans in Parliament. I don't think it's true. If you look at what has happened with banks and lending in the recent times, it's very clear that there's reckless, short-term, very unethical action. I mean, if you take Barclays Bank crooking on the LIBOR rate with other banks and then paying a fine of 2 billion euros, I mean, this is not even, it's not seen as corruption. It's seen as, oh, they made a small mistake, and obviously on that big balance sheet, the 2 billion is not going to hurt them. The shareholders are very happy, they pay it, and the next morning, the share price goes up. Why? Oh, because the risk has been eliminated. So the share price must go up. There's no ethical decision making in all of it. In fact, you can increase your share price through corruption. You can do that. I have case studies. If you do the MBA at USB, you might find it. Look at the guys who fix the prices. The motor cars we now know, they all pay fines. Volkswagen, BMW, Ford, all of them. I couldn't believe that one. The bread guys, the staple food of the poor, medical equipment to hospitals for crew. We now know that the construction companies that build a very World Cup stadium, they also colluded on pricing. We now have the basis of the meetings where they decided how to carve up the market and so forth. Who crooked in the arms deal? Not Africans, Germans, British, French, because the white people in the north, they like to collude with the noble savages of the south. And make a nice profit on the side. When Toby and Daly gets a nice discount on a 4x4, and when he's found guilty, we don't say, Tony, you did a very bad thing. Don't do this again. You brought shame on our nation. No. We carry him shoulder high to the jail because he's a hero. He beat the system. I hope you see what's at work here. This is how society loses its moral force. You destroy it by the public and the private sector. And then let us come to our own small spaces. How many of you have paid your TV license? Ja, kan nie betaal nie. As nou te min Afrikaans op die TV. 50 nou en nie wens. code is valid. I'm not talking here about broader civil disobedience. If a law is in principle unjust, like apartheid laws, then obviously you will not. But if a law, although it might be economically not making a lot of sense, but if the law is the law, and you say as a nation in Gauteng, oh, I like these wide roads, maar ek gaan nie betaal nie. If the court says you now have to pay until we make a difference, my sense tells me, for the sake of order in our nation, you have to pay until it changes. You see what I'm trying to say? So, the road accident fund, crook with medical aids where the doctors wholly in their rooms collude with us and the hospitals, and then traffic fines. In Cape Town, it's terrible to live in Cape Town. You think you never get the fines. Here they say, they're so efficient in the road. Now I say, oh, I have to go to my fine because in the old time, also in Nelson Mandela, where you're so slow they've not yet found the internet space for us to pay. If you don't pay that, you are losing shame. You are detracting from the story of the Swiss person who said, it's not about the fine, it's about the shame to not live up to the agreed principles of society. I'll tell you why. What has happened in South Africa is, as our political leaders, who are mostly in the public eye, have corrupted this nation, you reach a point where that spirit of corruption goes right down to people like me. And deep down you won't say, you say, as hulle so die hotelle bly, as hulle so geld steel, why must I? The moment you ask that question, you're on the slippery slope, you become part of the problem and not of the solution. So, it's interesting that when it comes to this, I always find this quite interesting, that the Americans who live in a constitutionally completely secular state, you may not pray in a school, that on every dollar note they say in God we trust, because I think they know you can trust nobody else. Definitely not Barclays Bank. Is there anybody from Standard Bank here? Nobody? Definitely not Standard Bank. Are you from Standard Bank? I've got 7 minutes left. Then we come to Heather said I'm actually a trained theologian. And if you want to know, and I also did some philosophy, but it's basically the same thing. So I just added with my training, unlike professionals, I'm trained to be good at nothing. A lawyer can do contracts, an accountant can write up books, a professor of physics can perhaps fly something to a far-off comet, a washing machine, and put it down there. Theologians are funny people. They are readers. They are hopefully public consciousness. They are hopefully able to hold up a mirror because they understand how social structures work. So in general, people would say religion is a wonderful thing. All the book religions are inherently public. They want to shape society. That's why Islam people pray at a certain time. They fast at a certain time in the public. They wear their clothing in the public. It's not a thing that religion should be private in the mosque. It's a public thing, and that's good most of the time. We can't write our liberation history without the power of religion, and specifically the Christian faith. It's impossible. Even if you're an atheist, you have to accept, without the struggle of the churches, we would not have gone through. I always say to people, there were 2 forces. Actually, only one, but there were 2 forces that broke the back of our. One was when the moral legitimacy of the system was questioned from a Christian perspective, and secondly, when economic sanctions became too tough. If you combine those 2, no system can go. Okay. Our TRC, I think, can be constructed or construed as a national cleansing ritual. which was good for our nation. And our constitution, I think, is very wise to say that you may worship in public as long as it happens on an equitable basis, which is unlike America, where you will not be able to do that. But for us, you can put it in school, that the operation of the president, in parliament, or whatever, because the constitution says as long as it happens on an equitable basis. But, my friends, like all human systems, religion can also be misused. And the best examples, they are so easy to pick, is obviously our venerable ANC, who have now developed their own secular political theology. And it is based on 4 doctrines, not 12 like the apostolical, only 4. And the 4 rules on which they built their faith is: number 1, we will rule until Jesus comes, not knowing that he might come at any time. I think that's why they grab as much as possible. A vote for the ANC, said Mr. Zuma in Tata, will ensure a place in heaven. They become the mediators for salvation. And then when the Matasi come in, the high priest of the ANC, the tripartite alliance is 3 in 1 like the Trinity. I wonder what to say today. That Trinity is in trouble. From a theological perspective, they have been in trouble for the ages. They won't know. And the last doctrine on which they built their faith is, up to Zuma, the ANC had 12 presidents, just like Jesus had 12 himself. So I asked them, which one was Judas? And I'm sure I know it. Colleagues, those of you who are older like me, we heard the stories before. If you read the stuff from 1944 from the Volkscongress, and you hear the voice of the Van, flow on your God, flow on your folk, flow on yourself. But you must be very careful. And this is where theology is important. History teaches us where a political movement who acts in illegitimate ways tries to secure their legitimacy by religious means, you're in for a war. Because they won't give up power. Because to give up power is to give away God. And God can never be defeated. Are you with me? And in my book, I have a wonderful chapter about our venerable true priest of our nation, Desmond Tutu, say, I will now pray for the fall of the ANC. It's in my book. Like I prayed for the fall of the National Party in 1985. And it's quite interesting. When that prayer went out in 1985, it was, in a way, the pinnacle of destroying the legitimate base of the National Party government. And then I say it's quite interesting. Many people say yeah, prayer is not important. Prayer is something you make up in your own mind. It's very interesting that that prayer has so much destroyed, obviously with other things as well, that it took only 8 years for that system to come to a complete collapse. So whenever politicians, not only the ANC but also others, whenever they try to use God, be aware of secular theologies, it's bad dogmatics and it's terrible politics. Be very careful. I don't have time to go into the other side of our religion I want to add. You might think after listening to me that this book is doom and gloom. It's not. The book is simply to unsettle us so that we can see the full reality of this nation and not be misled by thinking that what we see is what is the truth. This is what the book is about. But I pray though, and I think there's 3 issues, and now this can be an hour, I do it in 2 minutes. Education, which is absolutely crucial. An active civil society, that includes a free press and so forth, absolutely crucial. And obviously we still have this Mandela legacy that I think we can sustain. And I want, this is a beautiful photograph. If you can't live on the edge, don't live in South Africa. Go to Switzerland where they vote on whether to put up a robot at Church Street corner with Commissioner Street. This country is tough, but it's interesting because it lives in this ambiguity. I want to read you the piece I wrote for Mandela when he was, this is a mural in Amsterdam. If you put a person here, you would stand about this height. This is about 6 foot. You could see it's the whole building, which I took with my phone a while ago. I'd like to read you what I wrote about Mandela sitting in a hotel room in Sweden and watching his funeral on British TV, the BBC. I look at the C-130 and think back on the military conscription days, when those very planes would carry thousands of young white men and military equipment up and down to Namibia. They were needed to fight, so it was portrayed, against an advancing communism backed by Russia and Cuba. The Flossies, as they were called, always flew back the coffins of these young men, rarely over 18 years of age, who died somewhere on the border. Their remains were also draped in the national flag, though a different one. I look at the fighter jets that now accompany Mandela on his last journey south. Those very jets and their predecessor models were used in airstrikes as far north as the outskirts of Rwanda. Now they are on a peace mission. They are not needed for defense or attack. They are merely ceremonial. The military role has become an aesthetic. Today the C-130 can land at Mthatha Airport, built for the homeland government, but now an ordinary part of our one republic. The procession can move past the old Transkei University, now named after a fellow stalwart and Madiba's closest friend, Walter Sisulu. It will move up the newly named Nelson Mandela Drive, and then onward to Kunu, the herd boy and son of a chief, the leader of the ANC, the first black president of the United South Africa, a statement with global impact, but also a father and a husband, has finally come home. So life comes full circle for him and us. Thank you very much.
First of all, I would like to thank you for a very lovely presentation and for the opportunity to get to know you better. I look forward to reading your book. This is what in the past, though, what is your view between the headlines of what is happening right now in Parliament?
My answer is I don't look upon that fondly, because in terms of our constitution, Parliament is the sacred space of the people. It's the one place where you have to believe that rational debate, political concessions given and both, the art of the possible, will rule so that the country is ruled. But if the opposition does not play to the rules, and because of their frustration, then push the rules not only to the limits, but even going beyond what I would call fair public debate. If then the ruling party, because they suddenly for the first time to threaten, call in the police service to come and restore order inside that house, this country is in very, very deep trouble. And unless our leaders step back from that quite quickly, it will not only be a metaphor of what we can do, because it tells me what will happen if the ANC will lose Gauteng in 2016. If you used to be in the liberation movement, living in the moral high ground for ages from 1915, you have the sense of being unconvincible. And Africa has a very bad history. When liberation movement starts to lose support, they always resort to violence. That is dangerous. But I think it's to do with all collective responsibility. I'm not pointing fingers at one part. I think Malema and his gang democratically elected do not understand the civilized rule of public discourse, where you work on winning debates. You don't show fingers at people, you don't scream at them. That's not debate. That's thuggery. Now, if you believe that thuggery can bring you more votes, this country is in even more danger. I look upon that with extreme sadness, and I hope we will get a restoration. I'm not too positive about it. There's a physical political trial. Why do you ask? And I see the press is writing. You will send me before you publish. Any further contributions?
Where would you say is the biggest divide in our society between rich and poor, literate, illiterate? And where is our biggest opportunity to contribute to a righteous and an ethical society?
Yeah. Now it's clear the stats tell us that. The division is no longer racial, it is definitely now economic because of the huge rise. If you look at our Gini coefficient and you break it up for white people, black people, and so forth, as we did in the past, you will see that overall the Gini coefficient within the black population has radically worsened because of the quick and I think very good for us rise of middle income and high income black people. So the divide in South Africa, race is still sort of the emotional thing on the surface, but the real thing down is the class. And that brings us opportunities as well. I'm quite naive, but I think I've got the research to prove. You only turn a country around, you turn the education system around. That's the root of everything. Because that's where your values are formed, that's where your human basic skills are formed. You cannot get economic growth in a knowledge economy that requires sophisticated skills. If a grade 12 student, if he reaches grade 12, cannot read and write. We get first year students who cannot write proper paragraphs in English. They now give answers as if I'm the SMS spell on Facebook. Not that it be, not So I say to corporates, if you want to make this so-called social investment, invest in education, where should we start? Preschool education, nutrition programs from now on. So that by grade 6 and grade 7, we have the foundation on these people. The crime against humanity in this country post-apartheid is the education system. We have failed our children, and we will pay an extremely high price for that. Education is the answer. Education. Last question for us.
As jy sê, opvoeding is die belangrikste. Wat se vorm gaan opvoeding neem? Dink jy daar ons gaan wegbeweeg van fisiese skole na meer elektronies gebaseerd of 'n kombinasie?
Dit sal waarskynlik 'n kombinasie wees. Ek sien die spasie wat kurwe nou byvoorbeeld neem van massaal in homeschooling waar jy werk met vooraf opgeneemde of vooraf beskikbaar gemaakte inligting. Die elektroniese eeu gaan die gesig van education verander. Dis die wonderlike ding. Afrika hoef nie te wag om sê nou maar sy modderskole almal te omskep in fantastiese geboue. Jy kan doodgewoon gemeenskapssentrums dwars oor die ou sus en Transkei gaan opsit met die nodige tegnologie, maar dan moet jy jou onderwysers reg oplei want dit is 'n ander golf dan. En obviously jy moet seker maak dat jou delivery en assessment is goed. Ek dink ons kan, ek het in my boek, dat ek gesê 7 things that can change the education system. I can tell you it's not money. It's changing policies. Ons skole is glad nie in rad met ons ekonomiese behoeftes nie. In die ou dae het ons landbouskole, handelsskole, huishoudkundeskole, allerlei skole gehad, omdat ons geweet het jy moet diferensieer. Jy kan nie almal in dieselfde skoolstelsel doen. So die ding is verkeerd van die begin. Maar omdat tegnologie ons gaan help en as ons daarin kan, en ek sien die Gauteng regering doen met die Weskaap, is dit positief dat ons ding kan draai, maar dan moet ons dit doen. Daarom jy sê dit kan.
Education. I would like to make a statement here. You may agree with it or not. I grew up in Germany under Hitler, and that system deliberately kept people stupid. And all governments the world over do that. And our system, the education system, is such a mess because the present government is doing exactly the same. They don't want them to be educated.
Well, you make a good general point, sir, and that is that the mere fact that you are in a school or a university does not mean that you are in the bit more complicated. And Hitler was a terrible example, and that was not forget our own history, where schools were deliberately designed to provide us with the cheap labor of black people and not wanting more. Seeing them as possible. At least that is behind us. We now have this open opportunity. And we have to do it. Herzlichen Dank. Alle Leute, wir sehen wieder. Auf Wiedersehen.
Yes.